The lawyer slid the documents across the polished table with a quiet confidence that made my heart race. My parents' faces drained of color as they stared at the bank statements, proof that the $87,000 they'd borrowed from my college fund wasn't for an emergency home repair as they'd claimed to the bankruptcy court. It was for my sister Vanessa's lavish vineyard wedding 8 months ago. The same wedding where I'd smiled and served champagne because they couldn't afford to hire enough staff. Would you care to explain this discrepancy? Judge Martinez asked, her voice cutting through the silence. My father's hand trembled as he reached for his water glass. I never wanted it to go this far. But when you've been told your entire life that your dreams don't matter as much as your sister's, something eventually breaks. I grew up in the shadow of my older sister. Vanessa was the golden child, homecoming queen, straight-A student, and our small town's claim to fame when she landed a marketing job at a prestigious firm in Chicago. I worked just as hard, maintained the same grades, but was always introduced as Vanessa's little sister, Maya. My accomplishments were footnotes to her story. When I got accepted to Cornell's engineering program with a partial scholarship, my parents seemed proud. They had started a college fund for each of us when we were born, adding to it consistently over the years. My sister had used hers to attend Northwestern, graduating with zero debt. I was counting on mine to cover what my scholarship didn't. 3 months before I was set to leave for college, Vanessa and her boyfriend, Derek, got engaged. They wanted a fast wedding at a luxury vineyard resort that cost more than most people's homes. I still remember my parents sitting me down at our kitchen table, the same place where they'd helped me with homework and celebrated my acceptance letter. Maya, we need to talk about something important, my mom said, her voice gentle but firm. Vanessa and Derek have found their dream venue, but they need to book it now or lose it. Their savings won't cover it, and with the housing market the way it is. My father jumped in. We're going to need to borrow from your college fund, just temporarily. We'll pay it back before your tuition is due. The sinking feeling in my stomach told me they wouldn't. How much? I asked. They exchanged glances. About $60,000, my father admitted. But Maya, you've got that scholarship, and you can take out loans for the rest. Everyone takes loans these days. What about Vanessa and Derek? Can't they take out a loan for their wedding? Even as I asked, I knew the answer. Honey, they're trying to save for a house, my mom explained, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Starting married life with wedding debt would be so difficult for them. But starting my adult life with student debt was apparently fine. I didn't argue more that night. I'd learned long ago that when it came to Vanessa's needs versus mine, I would always come second. I nodded, went to my room, and applied for every scholarship I could find. I landed a few small ones, but nowhere near enough. When August came, my parents had only replaced $3,000 of my fund. Vanessa's wedding had expanded to include a designer dress, a honeymoon in Bali, and a surprise vintage car as a gift from our parents. Meanwhile, I took out $25,000 in loans for my first year alone. I worked 2 campus jobs while maintaining a full course load. I called home once a week, and each time my parents promised they were working on rebuilding my fund. But when I came home for Christmas, Vanessa and Derek announced they were expecting, and suddenly my parents were talking about helping them with a down payment on a larger house. That's when I stopped calling as often. I took extra credits, worked through summers, and barely slept. By my junior year, I was $73,000 in debt with 2 more years to go because I'd had to reduce my course load to work more hours. Then came the phone call that changed everything. My mother called, sobbing, saying they were filing for bankruptcy. Medical bills, credit card debt, and a home equity loan they couldn't repay had finally caught up with them. They'd been borrowing against their house for years to maintain appearances, including paying for Vanessa's wedding. But don't worry, my mother said. We consulted with a lawyer. The bankruptcy won't affect your student loans. Of course it wouldn't. Those were solely in my name. What my parents didn't know was that I'd been consulting with a financial advisor through a free program at Cornell. When I mentioned my parents' bankruptcy and the original loan from my college fund, her expression changed. "Maya, that's not a loan. That was your money they took," she explained. "And if they're declaring bankruptcy while having taken funds that were specifically designated for your education, that's something the court would be very interested in knowing." I was torn. These were my parents, but they had effectively stolen my future to give my sister a single, perfect day. With my advisor's help, I found a bankruptcy attorney willing to take my case pro bono. He explained that I could file as a creditor in their bankruptcy with my college fund as the debt they owed me. It would mean testifying against my parents, providing evidence, and potentially causing them serious legal trouble. I agonized over the decision. I called Vanessa, hoping she might offer to help repay what had been spent on her wedding now that she and Derek were both earning good salaries. Instead, she was horrified I would even consider taking legal action. "After everything they've done for us," she exclaimed. "Maya, everyone struggles with college costs. I worked hard to avoid debt by getting scholarships." She conveniently forgot about her fully funded college account. "They took my future, Vanessa," I said quietly. "They took it and spent it on your day, on gifts for you, on a down payment for your house. That's not fair. It's not my fault they chose to help me. Did you ever once say no? Did you ever once ask where all that money was coming from when you knew they weren't wealthy?" Her silence was my answer. When the bankruptcy notice officially arrived, I filed my claim. My parents were shocked, then angry, then pleading. My father called me ungrateful. My mother cried and said I was tearing the family apart. Vanessa stopped speaking to me entirely. I almost backed out a dozen times. But then I would wake up at 3 a.m. after 4 hours of sleep to work on a paper before my morning shift, knowing I'd be repeating the same exhausting routine for years while paying off my loans. Meanwhile, my sister was posting photos from her new 4-bedroom house and gender reveal party. And now, here we were in the bankruptcy hearing where my parents had claimed all their debts were unavoidable hardships. They never expected I would show up with bank records, text messages, and wedding receipts. "Mrs. Chen," Judge Martinez addressed my mother, "these records indicate you and your husband transferred $87,000 from an account designated as Maya College to pay for expenses related to your older daughter's wedding. Is that correct?" My mother's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you listed this transaction on your bankruptcy filing as, let me see, emergency home repair and medical expenses?" The silence was damning. "I'll take that as confirmation," the judge continued. "Mr. Chin, were you aware that misrepresenting financial transactions on a bankruptcy filing is a federal offense?" My father's lawyer quickly jumped in, but the damage was done. I watched my parents shrink in their seats, finally facing consequences for their choices. Judge Martinez turned to me. "Ms. Chin, while I understand this must be difficult, I want to commend you for your courage in coming forward. Too often, financial abuse within families goes unchallenged because of the emotional complications involved." Financial abuse. I had never thought of it that way, but hearing those words sent a wave of validation through me. This wasn't just about money. It was about years of being treated as less deserving, less important, less worthy of investment than my sister. The judge ruled that my parents' bankruptcy would not discharge their debt to me. The court ordered them to create a repayment plan for the $87,000 they had taken, plus interest. Their other debts received less favorable treatment than they might have otherwise, given the attempted fraud. As we left the courtroom, my mother grabbed my arm. Her eyes were red from crying. "How could you do this to us? To your family?" I gently removed her hand. "I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourselves when you decided my education and future weren't as important as Vanessa's perfect wedding. We always believed in you, Maya," my father said. "We knew you were strong enough to make it on your own. Vanessa needed more help than you. Those words confirmed everything. They had taken from me precisely because I was capable, because I would find a way to survive despite their actions. My competence had been used against me my entire life. "I'll see you at the first repayment hearing," I said, turning away. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "I hope you're happy now that you've ruined Mom and Dad financially. Real families support each other no matter what." I stared at those words for a long moment before typing my response. Real families don't sacrifice one child's future for another's luxury. I have supported this family with my silence, my acceptance, and ultimately with my college fund. I'm done supporting the idea that I deserve less. I blocked her number after sending it. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. My loans wouldn't disappear overnight, and the repayments for my parents would take time. The family relationships might never recover. But for the first time, I had stood up and declared that my future mattered. My advisor from Cornell called that evening to check on me. When I told her the outcome, she was quiet for a moment. "Maya, I know today it was about the money, but it was really about much more than that, wasn't it?" "It was about being seen," I admitted. "About not being erased." "Exactly. And now that you've been seen by the court, how will you make sure you keep seeing yourself? Keep valuing yourself?" Her question struck me deeply. For so long, I had accepted the narrative that my needs and dreams were secondary, that asking for what was rightfully mine was somehow selfish, that my role was to understand and forgive, even at great cost to myself. I graduated 2 months later, still with debt, but with a court-ordered repayment plan in place. I had 3 job offers from top engineering firms, all impressed by my academic performance, despite my heavy work schedule. I accepted the one that offered the best salary and loan repayment assistance program, even though it meant moving across the country. The day before I left town, I drove past my parents' house. They had put it up for sale as part of their bankruptcy restructuring. My mother was in the yard placing a for sale sign near their carefully tended roses. She saw my car but made no move to approach. I didn't stop. As painful as the whole experience had been, it taught me something invaluable. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. Sometimes it's the only way to make others recognize your worth. Sometimes it's the first step in recognizing your own worth. The bankruptcy hearing wasn't the ending of anything. It was the beginning of my refusal to be the family sacrifice, the beginning of my insistence that my dreams deserved the same respect and support as my sisters, the beginning of my understanding that loving someone doesn't mean letting them take everything from you. My phone rang as I drove away from my childhood home. It was my boss from the campus coffee shop where I'd worked for 3 years. "Maya, I just heard from Professor Winters that you're taking the position at Westlake Engineering. Congratulations. I always knew you were headed for big things." "Thanks, Denise. I couldn't have made it without that job." "Well, about that," she said. "Remember that scholarship fund I told you about? The one the Alumni Association runs for student workers? Your name came up at the last committee meeting. They want to award you $10,000 to help with your loans." I pulled over, overcome with emotion. This wasn't family money with strings attached. This was recognition of my hard work and perseverance. I don't know what to say. "Say you'll come back and speak to future students someday. Your story is important, Maya. Not just the bankruptcy part, but all of it. How you kept going when everything was stacked against you." After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried for a long time. Not from sadness, but from a profound sense of vindication. All those nights, working late shifts, all those early mornings studying, all those moments of doubting my decision to fight for what was mine, they had led me here, to a place where I was valued, where my efforts were seen, where my future was considered worth investing in. The bankruptcy hearing wasn't just about recovering the money that was taken from me. It was about recovering my sense of self-worth that had been slowly eroded over a lifetime of being considered less deserving than my sister. It was about refusing to accept that my place in the family and in life was to sacrifice so that others could shine. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone for a while. But as I drove toward my new life, I wasn't really alone. I was finally completely with myself. And that was enough. The first year at Westlake Engineering passed in a whirlwind of new challenges and hard-earned victories. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the demanding projects that left little time to dwell on my fractured family. My apartment was small, but entirely mine, the first space I'd ever had where I didn't feel like an afterthought. I filled it with engineering books, plants, and a carefully maintained budget spreadsheet that tracked every payment for my parents. They hadn't missed one yet, though each check arrived without a note, just their signatures and the steady reduction of the debt they owed me. Sometimes I wondered if they understood what the bankruptcy hearing had really been about. Probably not. In their minds, I was still the ungrateful daughter who had aired family business in court, not a young woman standing up for herself after a lifetime of being sidelined. I hadn't spoken to Vanessa in months. She'd sent a baby announcement when my niece was born, a mass email that probably went to everyone in her contacts. I sent a small gift, but received no acknowledgement. Part of me ached for the relationship we might have had in some other reality where we'd been valued equally, but I was done making all the effort. My therapist, another investment in myself I'd finally prioritized, helped me see that the empty space where my family had been didn't have to remain empty. I could fill it with people who saw my worth without requiring me to diminish myself. And slowly, that's what happened. I joined a rock climbing group, made friends with coworkers who respected my technical skills, and even started dating someone who listened when I talked about my dreams. My life was taking shape around what I wanted, not what was left after everyone else got what they wanted first. I was reviewing blueprints one Tuesday afternoon when my phone lit up with my mother's number. We hadn't spoken since a tense, brief call on my birthday 3 months earlier. My hand hovered over the screen before I answered. "Hello, Maya." My mother's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "I hope I'm not disturbing you at work. I have a few minutes. Is everything okay?" A pause. "Your father had a mild heart attack yesterday." The world tilted sideways for a moment. Despite everything, he was still my dad, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had built me a telescope when I became obsessed with astronomy in 5th grade. Before the college fund, before the bankruptcy, before he had chosen Vanessa's wedding over my education. Is he? He's stable. They're keeping him for observation, but he should be home tomorrow. She cleared her throat. He's been very stressed since we had to sell the house. The implied accusation hung between us. My father's heart attack was somehow also my fault. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Please let me know if anything changes with his condition." "That's it. Your father has a heart attack, and all you can say is you're sorry to hear it." Her voice rose. "He's been working 2 jobs to make those payments to you. At his age, with his blood pressure." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar guilt rising like a tide. Then I remembered my therapist's words. "You can have compassion without taking responsibility for problems you didn't create." "Mom, I'm genuinely sorry Dad is unwell. I hope he recovers quickly. But the payments are for money that was legally mine that you and Dad took. The court ordered the repayment, not me. The court wouldn't have known anything if you hadn't told them. We're your parents, Maya, after everything we've done for you." "What exactly did you do for me, Mom?" "You took my college fund to pay for Vanessa's wedding. You left me drowning in student debt while you were buying her a house." My voice remained steady despite the emotions churning inside. "I worked 30 hours a week while taking full engineering courses. I got 4 hours of sleep a night for 3 years. I nearly had a breakdown trying to keep up with everything." "We always believed in you," she said, echoing my father's words from after the hearing. "We knew you would succeed no matter what." Vanessa needed more help. Suddenly, I understood something that had eluded me before. You know what, Mom? You're right. You did believe in me. You believed in me so much that you thought I could overcome any obstacle, even ones you deliberately put in my path. You believed I was strong enough to carry not just my burdens, but Vanessa's too. The line was quiet for a moment. So yes, I succeeded despite having my college fund taken, despite working jobs that left me exhausted, despite knowing my own parents valued my sister's one-day celebration over my entire education. I succeeded, but not because of your choices, in spite of them. I heard her inhale sharply. Are you saying you won't even visit your father in the hospital after a heart attack? I'm saying I have compassion for Dad's health situation, but I won't accept blame for it. The payments are court-ordered because you both committed fraud. You can't use his medical condition to manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself. This isn't how we raised you to be. No, I agreed. It's not. You raised me to put everyone else first, to smile while serving champagne at my sister's wedding that was paid for with my future, to accept that I matter less than Vanessa. I had to learn how to value myself on my own. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, shaking slightly but also feeling strangely calm. I texted my friend Lucia to see if she wanted to grab dinner. I needed connection, but not the kind that left me feeling hollow. 3 days later, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa. The subject line read simply, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. But curiosity won out. Maya, I visited Dad in the hospital and Mom told me about your conversation. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I'd like to meet and talk if you're willing. I can fly out this weekend. Please let me know. V. I stared at the screen, surprised by the neutrality of her tone. No accusations, no guilt trips, just a request to talk. After consideration, I agreed to meet her at a cafe near my apartment that Saturday. What did I have to lose? I'd already lost my family once. The worst that could happen was confirming what I already knew, that they would never truly understand or accept my perspective. When Saturday arrived, I got to the cafe 20 minutes early, claiming a corner table where I could see the door. Vanessa walked in exactly on time, scanning the room until she spotted me. She looked different somehow, less polished than I remembered, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. The baby weight she'd complained about in social media posts was still visible 5 months after giving birth. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "You're welcome." I kept my tone neutral, waiting to see which version of my sister had shown up, the indignant one who had accused me of ruining our parents, or someone else entirely. I've been doing a lot of thinking since Dad's heart attack, and even before that, really. She looked down at her coffee. Derek and I are getting divorced. Of all the things I'd expected her to say, that wasn't on the list. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want her to be unhappy. "Don't be. It's been a long time coming." She took a deep breath. "The thing is, after we had Emma, everything fell apart. He started staying late at work, then not coming home at all some nights. I found out he's been having an affair with his assistant for over a year. Since before the baby, before we bought the house, maybe even before the wedding." "Vanessa, No, please let me finish." She looked up, and I saw something I'd rarely seen on my confident sister's face. Vulnerability. When I confronted him, do you know what he said? He said he never wanted the big wedding or the fancy house. He said he felt trapped by my expectations and my parents' expectations. He said the whole thing was a performance to keep everyone happy, and he just couldn't do it anymore. She wiped a tear. "It made me think about that day you confronted me about the college fund. You asked if I ever questioned where all that money was coming from. The truth is, I didn't want to know. I wanted the perfect wedding and the perfect life that Mom and Dad always told me I deserved. I wanted what they promised me. For the first time, I saw my sister clearly, not as the golden child or my lifelong rival, but as someone who had been just as shaped by our parents' expectations as I had been, just in a completely different way. After Derek left, I had to move back in with Mom and Dad. That's when I started seeing what was really going on with them. Dad working himself to exhaustion. Mom selling her jewelry to make ends meet. And the way they talked about you, like you were this heartless villain who had destroyed the family, not someone who had simply asked for what was rightfully hers. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. This is why I really wanted to meet. It's not much, but it's a start. I opened the envelope to find a check for $15,000. It's from selling my engagement ring and some of the wedding gifts, she explained. I want to help pay back what was taken from you. Derek and I should have paid for our own wedding, or had a smaller one we could afford. I see that now. I stared at the check, a tangle of emotions rising in my throat. It wasn't about the money, though it would certainly help with my loans. It was the acknowledgement, the first real acknowledgement from anyone in my family that what had happened to me was wrong. Thank you, I said finally. This means a lot, Vanessa. More than the amount. I know it doesn't fix everything, and I know we might never be close like sisters in movies. She gave a small, sad smile. But I want Emma to know her aunt. I want to try to build something new if you're willing. We talked for 3 hours that day, really talked, perhaps for the first time ever. She told me about her struggles as a new single mom. I told her about my work and my slowly healing heart. We didn't solve everything, but we created a small opening where light could begin to shine through. When she flew home the next day, we had a tentative plan for me to visit and meet my niece over the Christmas holiday. Not staying with our parents, but at a hotel nearby. Small steps. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from my father. His handwriting was shakier than I remembered, but still recognizable, the same writing that had signed my report cards and birthday cards throughout childhood. Dear Maya, he began, I want to apologize for taking your college fund. It was wrong of us, and the bankruptcy hearing made me see that. I've been too proud to admit it until now, but my heart attack has reminded me that time is precious. I don't want to leave this world with things unsettled between us. Your mother and I grew up believing that parents should treat their children according to their needs, not equally. Vanessa seemed to need more support, more encouragement, more help. You were always so capable, so independent. We came to rely on your strength instead of nurturing it. I can't change the past, but I can acknowledge the hurt we caused. The payments we're making aren't just a legal obligation. They're an acknowledgement of our mistake. I hope someday you can forgive us, but I understand if that takes time. I'm proud of the woman you've become, Maya. Not despite our failings, but perhaps partly because of them. You learned to stand up for yourself, even when it was difficult. That's a lesson I wish I'd taught you directly, instead of forcing you to learn it by standing up to us. With love and regret, Dad. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Not thrown away, but not displayed either. A complicated artifact of a complicated relationship. I wasn't ready to fully forgive, but I was ready to accept that he was trying to understand. It was a start. 6 months later, I was promoted to senior engineer at Westlake. The salary increase meant I could finally see the light at the end of my student loan tunnel. My parents had paid back almost half of what they owed me, and Vanessa had sent 2 more payments from selling assets from her marriage. I called my mother to share the news about my promotion. Our conversations were still tentative, careful dances around the deepest wounds, but they were conversations nonetheless. That's wonderful, Maya, she said, and I could hear genuine pride in her voice. Your father and I were just talking about you yesterday. Oh, what about? She hesitated. Well, we've been discussing what to do with the house we're renting. It's too big for just us, especially with your father still having some health issues. My guard went up immediately. Was this leading to a request to reduce their payments? Or worse, to move in with me? We've decided to downsize to a one-bedroom condo, she continued. It would free up about $1,000 a month, and we want to increase our payments to you. Get this debt paid off faster. I nearly dropped the phone. Mom, that's not necessary. The payment plan is working fine. It's not about necessity, Maya. It's about priorities. We're trying to do better. Her voice softened. We should have prioritized your education over appearances. We're trying to prioritize healing our relationship with you now, even if it means living more simply. After we hung up, I stood at my apartment window, looking out at the city lights coming on as dusk fell. I thought about priorities and choices, about the slow work of rebuilding trust, and about the power of finally being seen. The bankruptcy hearing had been a turning point, but not an ending. The real story was what happened afterward, the hard, daily work of establishing boundaries, nurturing self-worth, and cautiously rebuilding connections on new, healthier terms. I thought about the email I'd received that morning from Cornell, asking if I'd be willing to speak to engineering students about resilience and financial literacy. The universe had a sense of irony sometimes. My phone chimed with a text from my boyfriend, asking if I was still up for dinner to celebrate my promotion. I smiled and texted back a yes. As I got ready to leave, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked happy, confident, a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to stand up for it. The journey hadn't been easy. The wounds weren't all healed. But I was no longer the girl who would silently serve champagne at a wedding paid for with her future. I was the woman who had fought for that future and won. My sister called as I was heading out the door. "Congratulations on the promotion," she exclaimed. "Mom just told me." "Thanks, Vanessa. How are you and Emma doing?" "We're hanging in there." She paused. "Actually, I wanted to run something by you. I'm thinking of going back to school for a teaching degree. It would mean more student loans, but it's worth investing in your future." I finished for her. "I think that's great, Vanessa." "Yeah, I was thinking about what you said about valuing yourself. I've been a stay-at-home mom since Emma was born, but with the divorce and everything, I need something that's just for me, Something that's about my growth, not just what I can do for others." I smiled, recognizing the journey she was beginning. "I think that's the most important investment you can make." "I'm scared," she admitted. "School was easy for me before, but that was a long time ago. And being a single mom while studying." "It'll be hard," I said honestly. "But you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep going." "That's what you did, isn't it? Just kept going, even when it was unfair." "I did. And look where I am now." After we hung up, I grabbed my keys and headed out, ready to celebrate my promotion with people who valued me. My family situation wasn't perfect. The hurt and imbalance of all those years couldn't be erased with a few apologies and repayments. But something had shifted fundamentally, not just in how my family saw me, but in how I saw myself. The bankruptcy hearing had been about more than money. It had been about declaring that I mattered, that my dreams and future were valuable, that I deserved investment. And the most important investment I'd made wasn't my degree or my career, though those were significant. It was the investment in my self-worth, the recognition that I didn't have to set myself on fire to keep others warm. That lesson had cost me dearly, but as I walked toward the restaurant where friends were waiting to celebrate my success, I knew it had been worth every penny. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is refuse to be the family sacrifice. Sometimes breaking a painful pattern requires breaking things that seem precious in the moment. Sometimes the path to healing begins with the courage to say, "I matter too." And I did matter. Not more than my sister or my parents, but certainly not less. Equally worthy of support, investment, and celebration. It had taken a bankruptcy hearing, years of hard work, and difficult conversations to reach this understanding. But here I was on the other side, stronger, more compassionate, and finally free of the belief that my needs should always come last. As I walked into the restaurant and saw the smiling faces of people who celebrated my victories without requiring my sacrifices, I knew that this moment of being truly seen and valued, was what I had really been fighting for all along.